willkommen, bienvenue, bienvenido, welcome. This morning, or I should say this afternoon, we're having a discussion from our Canada-Spain series with author Michel Jean and Najat El Hachmi, moderated by Geza Ufer, because Spain is officially guest of honor since 10 a.m. this morning, and we're very happy about this information. But on est très heureux d'avoir pu coordonner cette session, cette discussion pour vous. Donc, j'invite maintenant les participants sur scène. Please, Michel, Najat, and Geza, join me on stage. Bonne session tout le monde.
Merci mille fois. Ja, bienvenue, welcome, and wann wien gut. Is that correct?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Catalan, and I'm very, very happy to have you here on stage. It is a talk about Entwurzelung, desarraigo in Catalan, déraciner en français, uprooting in English. Das Phänomen also in ganz, ganz unterschiedlicher Weise von Sprache und Kultur entrissen worden zu sein. Es wird viel um autobiografische Erfahrungen gehen an diesem Tag und es wird auch viel darum gehen, wie das Leben ist zwischen den Kulturen, denn unsere beiden Gäste heute kennen dieses Leben zwischen den unterschiedlichen Kulturen. Wir werden gleich auf Englisch sprechen, für alle, die jetzt möglicherweise noch nicht die Möglichkeit haben zu verstehen, wenn Englisch gleich gesprochen wird. Es gibt hier diese Headsets und die übersetzen simultan. Also hier geht auch gleich ein Kollege rum und verteilt Headsets, die dann auf Deutsch, Englisch bzw. Französisch unser Gespräch hier übersetzen werden. Ich bin Geza Ufer, ich bin Hörfunkjournalistin bei Deutschlandfunk Kultur und bei Radio 1 vom RBB. So, my name is Geza Ufer. I'm working for the National Public Radio and I'm really, really happy to introduce you Michel Jean, Canadian Innu from Quebec, and Najat El Hachmi from Catalonia. Very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I would love to introduce you shortly because your background is a very important factor in this case. Najat El Hachmi is born in 1979, is a Catalan-Moroccan writer who migrated from Morocco to Spain at the age of 8 years, yes. Right? And later on she studied Arabic and has since written 3 novels and 1 non-fictional book. That was precisely an essay that gave her the literary breakthrough, one can say, in 2006. I am also Catalan is the title. Yo també soc catalana.
Yes, perfect.
And this essay became really famous here, and in general, Najat El Hachmi deals with the themes of identity, with cultural rootedness, with alienation. So last year, this is important for us here in Germany, A Foreign Daughter was published here in Germany, the story of a young Moroccan woman in Catalonia who is, well, torn between 2 cultures, who would like to break away from her culture of origin because, for example, for her it would mean an arranged marriage and, yeah, so to say, an unfree life. A highly acclaimed book. And then we have Michel Jean. He's born in 1960, studied history and sociology. He is a Canadian Innu novelist and a famous Canadian TV and radio presenter. His book Kukum has just been published in German and tells the story of his great-grandmother Almanda Simenon, who married an Innu at the age of 15 and who had experienced the decline, the exclusion, and the destruction of the tribe's living and cultural space firsthand. Michel Jean's other 6 novels also deal with the forced assimilation of First Nations in Canada. and the touching anthology Amun, edited here in Germany by the Visa Verlag, gathers stories of 10 of the most important indigenous voices of the French-speaking Canadian province of Quebec. So very nice to have you here, Najat El Hachmi and Michel Jean. When we talk about uprooting, it seems to me that you both value the value of roots differently. Maybe you can explain to us, what do your roots mean to you? I mean, it's a very, very difficult question, but maybe we can try to find out, did they tend to provide additional support, or did roots prevent you from living freely and lightly in a mainstream society? Maybe we can start with you.
Well, good morning to everyone. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for your presentation. It's a pleasure to be here with you. About the question you made, I think before understanding how the roots are important, or if the roots are important or not, I think the first thing is to understand what what are your roots? Because for me, it was a very long journey, and I had to investigate a lot to discover my own roots, because nobody knew that people like my family exist at all, because I was born in a very small village in the north of Morocco, from a very rural area. I mean, very rural area. I mean, no tap water, no electricity, no, all the topics about the rural areas were in my childhood. And the other thing that was very specific from my roots is that my family had a language which wasn't the official languages in Morocco. None of the official languages in Morocco. I am from Amazigh culture and language, so people around me used to speak a language that nobody knew that existed. So when we went to live to Spain at the age of 8, we had to explain that because nobody knew about that. But I remember that at the beginning, I never said that I was from this background, because it was like, it's not important.
No?
It was kind of a shame, because in Morocco, being from this origin was a very, was something very negative, because rural people were, illiterate, were underdeveloped, or sorry for my English. I have to say it's my fourth language, and I'm doing my best, but it's not like the others. But in Morocco, there's there's a very negative view of people like my family. But the thing is that this language, Amazigh, which maybe you know as Berber, a Berber language, this language is not written. So I grew up in a oral society, and the very special thing with this childhood that I had is that here there were a lot of women. They were women, all women, that were telling a lot of stories around me. So I think I became a writer before learning to read, because I was exposed to this oral literature from women in my family, and that was a very important. That's the most important thing from my roots for me, because that made me a writer more than other things.
So
and there were some things that were very conflictive in my roots. For example, the place for women. I mean, but I could solve this conflict by telling the stories of our stories, the stories that never have been told before.
So that's very interesting. So your perspective is kind of very ambiguous. On the one hand, you got the talent of writing, maybe because of this very interesting oral history background. At the same time, your role as a woman, for example, in your culture is not the one you want to
Yes.
give to the next generations, right?
Yes, the thing is, I grew up in a very segregated society. I mean, women were the the expression we tell about belonging to walls. That's a very usual expression when we talk about sons of immigrants. I could see these two words before being the daughter of immigrants because there were already two words where I grew up, because there was the world of women's world and men's world. And in this segregated environment, women were like, they couldn't go outside, but they could go outside with capacity to tell stories. So there were more, freedom was inside the houses where they were locked in.
Yeah. Michelle, maybe you can tell us a bit about your experience. Have you ever felt discrimination in a way? Or I don't know whether it's true, but someone told me that you had kind of coming out pretty late. Is that true? You were already a famous TV moderator, and then there is this very, very funny story with your cousin you have to tell us.
Yeah. Well, the part of what you're telling is what my mother told me, that she lived.
Oh, really?
The discrimination, the thing that they used to call Inus at the time savages, and my mother being called savage, didn't feel you weren't proud of that, so they tried to blend in and disappear because we were raised in the city, not in the community, and what happened with that is that I was raised outside my community, so I didn't learn the language, but I had 100 questions all the time. But on the contrary, I was very proud of that heritage because it is my roots. It is something that the stories of my grandmother and all that I was raised with always for me had a lot of importance. But in society, it was not necessarily a good thing to be Innu. I mean, people didn't talk well about us. So my friends knew I was Innu, and I talked about it all the time with my friend. And my nickname when I was young was Chief. So that was okay. That's better than that. I'm Chief. I like that. And so that was good. But when I started working on TV, I didn't tell because I didn't want to hear the jokes, to hear the bad things. And I don't want anybody to say you have the job because of that. So, but at one time, I was in, I started writing at the time. And in a small community in Pessamit, which is on the North Shore, the librarian there, she put some of my books, and I hadn't at the time written on indigenous topics, and she put my books in a shelter, and she said, Innu writer, Michel Jean, Innu writer. So somebody sent me a picture of that, and I thought, wow. So she was telling the kids over there, because the problem is that there are no Innus on TV, actors, in the public space, you never see. So if you grow in a community, you never see somebody like you, okay? So I said, wow, okay, so maybe I should start telling it. So at least the kids in the community see that it's possible to be out there. And after that, I wrote a book that's called Atuk, that's going to be edited and in the spring here by Visa also. And when my grandmother died, I was close to her, and I loved her a lot. And she was born, raised in the territory. She was born in a tent, and I was born in an hospital, cut from that word. And I didn't have the answer that I wanted because she didn't want to talk too much about it. And at her death, my mother's cousin, she came to me and she said, Michel, I need to talk to you. So I said, sure, it's okay. And she knows me for TV, but I've never met her. So she said, Michel, the Innu, you have it in you. Well, I said, that's nice. But what do you mean? Well, she said, I've seen you many times where everybody around you are excited, getting nervous. And that's true. In my job, I've covered wars. I had a gun pointed at me, all that kind of stuff. So it's a situation where I ran away of people throwing rocks. So, but I'm always calm, right? But so she said, I see you in this situation and you're always calm. I said, that's Innu. And I said, yeah, I'm like that, but I always thought it was my character. And now she's telling me it's a cultural thing. So I said, what's the part of Innu that survived in me? And that's where my personal quest started. And then I started writing on different topics.
And I don't know, but you said you never told someone in TV or on the radio that you were Innu. Did that change? Now you are kind of known for being an Innu, or is that still separated?
You know, when you start your career, you always think that it could end the next day, especially in our jobs. And so you don't want to take any chance. But getting a certain age, you don't care. What the heck? So I was at that point. So I didn't care anymore at that time. When I was younger, well, you know what I think. I was more concerned about what people think and said about me. Now I don't care too much. And I think it is important. I do it because I think it is important for, as I said earlier, young indigenous people to see that they can be somewhere, that you can have a journalist on TV, because I'm the only one in whole Quebec who is on TV. And there are no comedian, or almost no comedian. We are nobody. Our history is not in the history book that we study at school. In Canada, when you learn history book, in the history of Canada in book, it started in 1534 with Jacques Cartier. Before that, there's nothing. As I used to say, it's just like if the Germans wouldn't talk about Romans, they were here before, but heck, they're not Germans. I mean, why should we study Romans? Well, that's how we study history in Canada. We don't care about what happened before French or English came in the country. So it was important for me to start to put that up front.
I see.
It's my small part.
Yeah. Najat, when did you start thinking about your roots, and when did you start writing about your roots and coming out? I mean, this book saying I am Catalan too. What is it? What is it explaining? What is it talking about?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I was born in that place in Morocco, but I went to live to another place in Spain, which was which had a very specific, difference. I mean, we arrived to Catalonia and we learned the language. We didn't know which language, and then we discovered it was Catalan. And then after that, because our other children at school they were sons of the other immigration from other areas with Spanish, we had to learn another language. We discovered that to communicate with our, we had to learn another. That wasn't a problem.
Maybe we have to explain to everybody. Catalan, it is a region. I think around 7 million people live there. And most of them speak two languages, Catalan and
Everybody
Spanish.
in Catalonia speaks Spanish and Catalan because, during the Franco dictatorship, Catalan was only, you couldn't speak the language outside of it wasn't at school. And after that, the government started to teach Catalan at schools. And we arrived after that, but we didn't know that, we were because sometimes people tell me that, you've chosen to speak Catalan or to write in Catalan. I did nothing. I mean, I just did what it was at school, and I had 8 years old. I couldn't choose anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
Just to ask you one question, I was just thinking, I mean, both of your languages, the Innu and the Catalan, was forbidden for quite some years. Why did Catalan survive and Innu not?
It
How
was
come?
forbidden from the officials, official places at school.
But it
Books.
was written
But
too.
then it was written, and yeah, I mean, Catalan is like Spanish.
Yeah, right.
It's as
Maybe
old as
that's the main,
Spanish. and
ma-
has
main difference, right? Maybe that's one
It's a
reason why
Well, Inuit
Catalan
still
survived.
speaking is
It's-
still speaking in communities. But the difference between your story and my story is that she immigrated in Spain and the Catalan country, as for us, indigenous, what's the French and the English who immigrated?
But this is
this
No,
place.
I had
this is like-
I
this
had
is-
the minority language
she's the-
in Morocco,
Yeah.
and then I immigrated to another place that had a minority language. as well.
in Spain.
So it's a
like
lottery for me. I
double
mean,
double minority status.
double minority languages, and then two other languages that were part of our lives as well. Not Arabic, but Spanish was very. I mean, there were a lot of people in my neighborhood because it was a neighborhood with different waves of immigrants. So I mean that was a very normal thing. But you were asking that because I don't.
I was asking why Catalan survived and
Oh,
Inuit-
Catalan survived because it has a very long
long
written
tradition and written.
I mean,
stuff, yeah.
at the Middle Age, we have a very. I mean, you have to know that Cervantes, for example, said that the best novel he had read was Tirant lo Blanc, which was
I
written
see.
in Catalan.
I see.
I mean, it is a it's a language coming from Latin, so it's not like Damazic, like my first mother tongue.
But Inuit is still spoken. It's not disappeared. I don't speak it because I was taken out of the community, but Inuit is still very well alive, and you still have some elders in Innu communities who only speak Innu. It's not a language that disappeared. And it's not because it's written or not. I don't think that makes a difference if a language will survive, if it's written or not, if it's spoken. The difference for us is the fact that the schools are French. So the kids go to French school. And in the population where you have, so if you have kids that are from a minority group and they go to the majority group school, there'll be peer pressure in the school to speak the French language, and that's the problem. You have the same thing in Canada with francophones who live outside Quebec. If you go in, I worked for 2 years in Saskatchewan. I work in Ontario also, and the assimilation rate was 100% for francophones outside Quebec because there's peer pressure. And we live in North America. Here in Europe, you have all those many languages in different countries. So it's normal that you have different languages in different places. But in North America, there's English. And then there's that, like in Quebec, you have French, and you have the native people who speak. So we're not in the same environment, I would say.
But you know something that happens in Catalonia? It's that most of the people that immigrated recently to Catalonia are from Morocco, but from this area of Morocco. So some linguistics, well, the people that studies linguistics, they say maybe the third mother tongue in Catalonia is my mother tongue, Amazic, and I also think that it is a very important language in all Europe because this area of Morocco that I came from is an area where people have been immigrating from of the beginning of the 20th century. So there is a huge diaspora of all the countries in Europe, and I can hear Amazic in a lot of cities in Europe, and nobody knows that there is a hidden language there, which is an international language, but nobody knows that. I mean, here in Germany, for example, there is a very big community coming from this area of Morocco. I have a lot of family in Germany speaking Amazic. So, but you were asking about identity, Catalan identity.
I just wanted to come back to our original issue about uprooting, because to be honest, I have the impression that your point of view is kind of different, that you are kind of having the idea that roots aren't necessarily empowering.
No, I have a different point of view because first of all, we had to think a lot about Catalan identity because nobody knows, what it is how it is to be Catalan. I mean, if you ask a Catalan to, like, tell, who is Catalan and how, it's impossible to define this because you have a lot of people coming from, from different places. It's a place of people, people from immigrant origins. So, I mean, the only thing that was clear was the language, but other things, I mean, in every identity, for me, it's very difficult to, like, say, Catalans are like that, Spanish people are like that. I'm not comfortable with this, this idea of identity as a very static, very essential thing. So when I wrote that first book, I felt part of the Catalan society. I was growing up in that society. My son was born there. And I used to have a lot of people telling me that I wasn't able to become Catalan because some Catalan people thought that because I was coming from another country, I couldn't become Catalan. But even people from Morocco, they used to tell me that I would never be Catalan because I was born in Morocco. And then I thought, but I'm living here. And this place is Catalonia, so I belong to the place I'm growing up because my future is. I mean, when I imagine myself in 20 years, the idea of going back to Morocco, it doesn't exist for me, but for any immigrant because
very interesting.
There isn't a place to go back.
But the Berber,
there's no place to go back.
But the Berber, which you're originate from, were indigenous in Morocco.
Yeah.
Arabs came after. They were the first occupant of the country at the time. Before.
I was just thinking, because we are running out of time, and I would love to ask you one last question, because before we talked about your autobiography, your history, but what do you think, what must a society offer to make it possible to people to build new roots? What is it, what a government should do, or maybe especially in Canada, should do?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I do.
What must
I'll go answer?
But,
what must
I think it's more for you than for me. Go
what
ahead.
must a society offer to support people in putting down new roots? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we're not talking the same story. I tried to explain it, but I think I'm not being able to do it really good. What I was saying is that the difference between, and I find it very interesting, her story and my story, is that in our story, in the story of the Inus, it's not a story of migrating. It is a story of colonization.
Yeah, you're right.
And so
yeah.
I try to put that point. It's not that's not up to the point here, but I'm just trying to say that we're not in the same. We're not in the same history book. And I was saying that the Arabs was a colonization also there, from the Berber in a certain sense.
Many years ago, I mean.
Now I see your point. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. But what I mean is that our story is a story of colonization, so it's just different.
No.
Yeah, but very, very important last point for our little discussion. I mean, this was just a discussion as a amuse-gueule, so to say. But I'm very.
Well, the best thing is to read our books.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing. And you can find the book shop right in front of our room here. And I'm very, very happy to got to know you today. And all the best and have a great Frankfurt Book Fair. And I hope to see you again one day. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Thank you very much.